The sun was dipping low behind the dusty Arizona hills, bleeding shades of amber and gold across the highway. Jacob Turner wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag and leaned against the faded red pickup he'd been fixing all afternoon. His garage, Turner's Auto and Repairs, was small, worn out, and barely holding on, much like the man himself. Jacob was only 34, but life had carved heavy lines into his face. 3 years ago, his wife passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, all alone. Between school runs, bills, and the never-ending struggle to keep his garage alive, Jacob's days were a storm of exhaustion and hope. Still, every morning, Lily would run into his arms and say, "Daddy, when you fix cars, you fix people's days." And that one little sentence was enough to keep him going. That evening, just as Jacob was about to lock up, he heard the sound of a car pulling in, loud, sputtering, and clearly in trouble. He turned to see a sleek 1969 Mustang shining in the fading light but coughing smoke from the hood. Out stepped a woman in her early 30s. She wore a tailored jacket, expensive sunglasses, and an expression of frustration. She looked completely out of place in that dusty little town. Hi," Jacob called out. "Having some trouble there?" The woman sighed, brushing her hair out of her face. "Yeah, I was on my way to a meeting in Phoenix and this thing just died on me." Jacob gave a sympathetic nod. "Pop the hood. Let's see what we've got." As he leaned over the car, the woman crossed her arms, clearly uneasy. Her phone buzzed non-stop, and he could catch glimpses of messages with names like board meeting, investor call, and press interview. "You're a busy one," he joked lightly. "You have no idea," she muttered. It took Jacob an hour to fix the problem. A broken fuel line and a loose connection. Nothing fancy, but tricky enough to stop a classic car like that. When he finished, he stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead. All done. Should run smooth now. Try it. The woman turned the key, and the Mustang purred to life like a wildcat freed from a cage. Her eyes lit up with genuine surprise. "Wow! I've taken this to high-end shops before, and no one could get it to sound like this." Jacob smiled faintly. Sometimes all it takes is patience and a little heart. She looked at him curiously. "You run this place alone?" "Mostly, yeah," Jacob said. "It's just me and my little girl." Trying to keep things afloat. There was something honest and humble in his tone, the kind of sincerity money couldn't buy. The woman nodded slowly, almost studying him. "How much do I owe you?" Jacob hesitated. "Don't worry about it, you were stranded. Consider it on the house." Her eyebrows shot up. "On the house? You sure?" He smiled again. "Yeah, I've been there before, stuck in the middle of nowhere needing a little help. I know how it feels." The woman looked at him, as if seeing him differently now, not just a mechanic, but a man with depth. She reached into her bag, pulled out a card, and handed it to him. "My name's Claire," she said. "If you ever need something, anything, call me." Jacob looked at the card. It was simple, elegant, embossed with gold letters. Claire Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. He blinked, surprised. He didn't know much about business, but even he'd heard the name Whitmore, one of the biggest tech and real estate companies in the country. He chuckled awkwardly. "Well, that's something. You're, kind of a big deal, huh?" She smiled faintly. "Let's just say I'm usually the one helping others." Feels nice to be on the receiving end for once. As she got back into her Mustang, she glanced at him once more. "You're a good man, Jacob. Not many left like you." And with that, she drove off into the evening light, leaving behind only the soft hum of her engine and a lingering feeling in Jacob's chest. The next few weeks were the same grind for Jacob, fixing cars, chasing payments, trying to give Lily the best life he could. But he couldn't stop thinking about that woman, Claire. Something about her felt unfinished, like their paths had crossed for a reason. One stormy night, as thunder rumbled and rain poured over the tin roof of his garage, Jacob sat at his desk, staring at a shut-off notice from the power company. He sighed. The numbers never added up. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "I just need one break, Lord." One miracle. The next morning, as he dropped Lily off at school, she hugged him tight. "Don't worry, Daddy." Miracles happen when good people don't give up. He smiled faintly. "You sound just like your mom." When he got back to the garage, a black SUV was parked outside. A man in a suit stepped out and handed him an envelope. "Mr. Turner?" the man asked. Yeah?" "This is from Miss Whitmore." Jacob opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "Greater than Jacob, I've been the T."
The road to Phoenix stretched endlessly before Jacob Turner, winding through sun-scorched deserts and dreams he never thought he'd chase. His heart pounded in rhythm with the tires rolling against the asphalt. In the passenger seat sat a tattered folder, inside it, a few documents, a resume he hadn't updated in years, and the letter that started it all, Claire Whitmore's invitation. Lily had hugged him tightly before he left. "Daddy, promise you'll come back happy." "I promise, sweetheart," he'd said, brushing her hair aside. "Maybe this trip will change our lives." By the time he reached downtown Phoenix, skyscrapers loomed like glass mountains. He parked outside a towering building labeled Whitmore Industries, the same name embossed on the card Claire had given him. The entrance alone looked like another world, marble floors, guards in suits, and a receptionist who smiled too perfectly. Jacob, wearing his best, though slightly worn, jacket, felt wildly out of place. But he squared his shoulders and walked in. "Mr. Turner," the receptionist asked politely. "Ms. Whitmore is expecting you." He nodded, his hands trembling slightly. Moments later, the elevator opened to the top floor, an ocean of glass walls, green plants, and soft jazz echoing in the background. At the far end of the room, standing beside the window overlooking the city, was Claire. "Jacob," she said warmly as he approached. "You came." "I wasn't sure you were serious," he admitted, smiling nervously. "Oh, I was very serious," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "Do you know why I started my company?" Jacob shook his head. "My father was a mechanic," she said quietly. "He had a small shop, much like yours. He fixed people's cars for free sometimes, because he believed kindness always comes back. When I lost him, I promised to build something that honored his values. But somewhere along the way, I got lost in numbers, investors, and profits." She turned to him, her voice soft but firm. "When you helped me that day, without knowing who I was, it reminded me of him. It reminded me why I started." Jacob's chest tightened. "I was just doing what anyone would have done." "No," she said, smiling gently. "Not anyone. Most people would have seen a fancy car, a rich woman, and smelled opportunity. But you saw a person who needed help." She handed him a folder. Inside were blueprints and papers labeled Whitmore Community Repair Initiative. "This project," she said, "will create small auto repair centers in struggling towns, places that provide honest work, fair prices, and opportunities for people like you. I want you to manage the first one. You'll have a full team, resources, and a salary that lets you breathe again." Jacob's eyes widened. I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," she replied with a grin. "Because I don't make this offer twice." He chuckled nervously, trying to absorb it all. "I don't have fancy degrees, Ms. Whitmore. I'm just a guy who fixes cars." Claire leaned forward. "That's exactly why you're perfect. I don't want business sharks, I want people with heart." Jacob smiled, his throat tight with emotion. "Then, yes. I'll do it." "Good," she said. "Welcome to Whitmore Industries, Mr. Turner." Weeks turned into months, and Jacob's life changed faster than he could believe. The first community repair center opened in his hometown, clean, modern, and shining with opportunity. The older Turner's Auto.